If you look at this and you don't believe that this is 10 Chambers' indirect way of telling us that the knife is the best melee weapon in the game, well, I guess you can keep on living in denial. Hello everyone, Professor Scaly here, and welcome to the alternate R5C3 level guide. As always, we're going to be starting off with your loadout, and today I recommend you bring along with you a bio tracker and 3 burst sentries. A little bit of a special loadout. Typically you wouldn't see something like this unless if we were dealing with a reactor type mission, which is actually not the case. We're going to be dealing with 2 uplink terminals for our main objective. However, in order to get to them, we're going to have to go through multiple different zones, and almost every single one of the security doors along the way are going to have alarms tied to them. And in these zones, we're not really given a whole lot of ammunition. We get a lot of tool refill though, which tells us that we have to rely more so on our tools to survive these alarms than our actual guns. And we could try to go with a mind-player C-foam strategy of just perma C-foaming doors and keeping enemies out, but the level is designed in a way where that really doesn't work out all that well, and it's incredibly risky to try to pull off that strategy, which is why I would much rather just go for 3 sentries. We're given a ton of tool refill, like I said, so we could just keep resupplying them for every single one of the alarms, and they can deal with a lot of the enemies for us if we position them right, in which case we just have to deal with a few enemies that do make it past the sentries, and we'll have the ammunition to manage that and get all the way to the end of the level. As for why I recommend burst sentries over anything else, it's just because a lot of the enemies during these alarms are just going to be regular strikers or shooters, so things like sniper sentries aren't really all that great for this level. And while you could probably swap out 1 or maybe even 2 of the burst sentries for an auto sentry or a shotgun sentry and still get some pretty decent results, I personally have not tested auto or shotgun sentries in this level, which is why I recommend them. So if you really want to swap out one of the sentries for something else, by all means go on ahead. You will probably still find success if you know how to play this right, but if you want a nice, chill, and fairly easy experience for most of these alarms, just bring in triple burst sentries with you and they will do wonders. Dropping down into level, you'll see that your main objective is to find 2 specific terminals and create uplinks with both of them. And these 2 terminals will always be located inside zone 377. Meanwhile, you and your teammates are going to be starting off inside zone 371. And like I said earlier, in this level, pretty much all the way until you actually get to the uplink terminals themselves, most of the refill packs you find are going to be medipacks and tool refills. Although there will be a few ammo packs along the way, so keep an eye out for them. But as you make your way through zone 371, just dealing with the enemies and grabbing those resources, you'll eventually be able to find the security door to zone 372. This door is just simply a full team scan, so pretty easy to get into it, and inside zone 372, it's pretty much the same thing as before. More enemies, more resources, although there's actually going to be 2 different security doors in this area. One to the east to zone 373, and one to the north to zone 374. Now, zone 374 is the direction you need to head into to actually get to your terminals. Zone 373 is basically just an optional resource zone, although I would never ever recommend people actually go in here in a legitimate run. The reason for that being that there is a class 3 cluster alarm tied to the door, so you have to expend resources to get into there, and inside of that zone, there are going to be 2 scouts patrolling about, and a lot, and I mean a lot, of giant strikers and hybrids. So you have to make your way through every single one of these enemies in order to even get to those resource packs, and from my experience, in total, you're only going to find 4 uses of medipacks, 4 uses of ammo packs, and 4 uses of tool refill inside of that zone. And the med packs and the tool refill aren't really worth it. The only thing worthwhile would be the ammo, but the amount of ammunition you might have to expend on that class 3 cluster alarm, as well as the ammo you might have to spend on those giants or scout waves if you end up waking them up, will very quickly outweigh the amount of ammo you actually get back from that ammo pack. Which is why I never like going in here, as I feel like in most situations, you're actually going to be losing out on your resources. But for those of you who love to defy me or just really curious and want to head in there yourself, let's take a look at a map overlay because like I said, there is an alarm tied to the door. And as you can see with this overlay, there are 2 different locations enemies could possibly spawn from, and there are a few different doors we're going to be leaving shut during this alarm and a few different doors we're going to be leaving open. Now, this is actually a good opportunity for me to explain how alarms are sort of going to work in this level since we're running a triple sentry strategy. Because you may notice that these 2 doors here, I've labeled you want to leave open. And typically people would think, well, we would want to shut them to delay the enemies a bit, right? Not really, because the thing is, if we shut that door, a lot of enemies are going to be piling up on it, so when they do break it down, because there's no mine to deal with most of them, all those enemies are going to be rushing in at the same time, which is going to overwhelm the sentry and make it so that most of the enemies are going to get right past it. We want enemies to come in as a trickle, not as a swarm. Hence why for this alarm and pretty much any of the alarms up ahead, we're going to be making sure that the door or doors that lead directly into a room that they will be taking, we leave open so they don't pile up. The reason why these two doors over here are left shut is because we don't want enemies to path in through these areas, since this will be the location where we're going to be doing most of the scans. As for these two outer doors, the reason why I'm recommending you leave them shut is because they're far away enough from where our sentries are located at that even though the enemies will pile up a little bit on the door as they try to break it down, they will then start trickling in through the second door as they come into the room, since not every single enemy will be staying shoulder to shoulder as they travel that distance, so they still come in as a little bit of a trickle. And we're going to have two of our sentries facing towards the northern open door and one facing towards the southern, or the other way around, up to you and your teammates. Once you've taken care of this though, you can just pack up your sentries and head to the zone, and good luck trying to get those resources without waking up every single one of those enemies. As for everybody else though, continue up north to the security door to zone 374. This door is going to have a class 5 alarm tied to it, and as you can see with this map overlay, there are two different locations that enemies could possibly spawn from. Again, we're going to be leaving these two outer doors shut just to delay them a little bit, and then this door right here we're going to be leaving open. As for our sentries, we could position them in a few different locations in this room. Really, the general idea is you want to make sure the sentries have a decent amount of time to actually shoot at the enemies before they make them pass, but you don't necessarily want to place all three of your sentries in the same location, because if they do, then they're all going to be shooting at the same enemies, which sometimes it's not that big of a deal. They are burst sentries, so it's not like they're one-shotting these strikers anyway. But if something like a giant striker comes in through that door and all three of your burst sentries lock onto it, it is going to take them a little bit of time to actually kill that giant, which gives the rest of the striker shooters plenty of time to get right past the line of fire of the sentries and make their way to you. So while you don't absolutely have to, it is usually a good practice to at least position your sentries a little bit away from each other so that they're not all guaranteed to lock onto the same enemies over and over and over again. Either way though, once you have your sentries set up and your team is good to go, activate the alarm, get to work on the scans. If only one or two enemies are making it to you at the same time past your sentries, feel free to just save some ammo by meleeing them. Once you finish the alarm, pack up your sentries, open up the door, and you can head into zone 374. Inside of here, it's going to be similar as it was before, although instead of just regular striker shooters, we're also going to have a single scout patrolling about, a few regular chargers sleeping in here, and also from this point on, most of the zones you go through are going to have a fair amount of giant strikers in them. As you make your way to the back end of it though, you'll find a security door to zone 375. This door is going to have a class 5 alarm tied to it, and as you can see with this map overlay, there's only one possible spawn location for enemies and two different doors they're going to have to go through. So once again, we're going to be leaving the outer door shut just to delay the enemies a little bit, and the inner door we're going to leave open. As for our sentries, I will usually have two or maybe even all three of them facing directly towards that door, and I'll call it good. As for this alarm though, every single one of the scans are going to be full team scans, and they take a little bit longer to complete than your average full team scan, so all of you have to stay over here and work on the scans together. Once you're good though, activate the alarm, get all the scans done, and with it completed, you can pack up your sentries and head into zone 375. And inside zone 375, once again, more enemies to deal with, regulars as well as a fair amount of giants, more resources to collect, and there's going to be two different scouts patrolling about in this area. There's also going to be the secondary bulkhead door down at the far southern end of the zone. However, we're not going to be able to open this up until we complete our main objective, as there's no bulkhead key or door control in the level, so we'll have to come back here a little bit later. Aside from all that though, not really anything else inside the zone. The security door to zone 376 though is found towards the northern end of the area. This door is going to be a class 6 sustain alarm, and as you can see with this map overlay, there are two different locations enemies could possibly spawn from. And once again, we're going to be leaving these doors here shut just to delay the enemies a little bit, and then these three doors that lead directly into your room, we're going to leave every single one of them open. And since we've got three sentries and there are three different directions they could take, we're just simply going to do one sentry near each door. Although I wouldn't necessarily say have the sentry facing towards the open door, but maybe have them outside of the open door facing towards the direction that enemies are coming from. That way they have a bit more sight line and they're able to deal with enemies from a little bit further away. Once you complete this alarm, you can open up the door and head into zone 376. In here, there's going to be even more enemies, although for the most part, it's just going to be a lot of regular chargers. There will be a few regular strikers and giant strikers though, and there's also going to be a single charger scout patrolling about. So make your way through here, dealing with every single one of the enemies, keeping an eye out for those resources of course, and at the far northern end of this area, you'll be able to find that security door to zone 377. This door though is going to have a class 7 mixed alarm tied to it, And as you can see with this map overlay, there's only one possible spawn location for enemies, so we're going to be leaving this outer door shut to delay them just by a little bit, and then we're going to leave this door open right here to funnel in all the enemies through this location, and then we're just going to have all 3 of our sentries facing directly towards that area. Once again, spread them out a little bit from each other, because during this alarm, not only will we deal with regular strikers and shooters, but you're also going to have a few hybrids coming in, and we don't want all 3 of our sentries to lock onto the hybrids at the same time and only focus fire them. Once everything is up though, activate the alarm, get to work on the scans, and assuming you're able to survive, you can go out, clean up any of the enemies that are still left alive, pack up your sentries, and then head into zone 377 itself. And upon entering into the area, you'll find yourself in a big open room. In here, there's going to be no enemies whatsoever, but there will be a fair amount of resources for you to collect: med packs, tool refills, and ammo packs. So take some time to go throughout this entire area, use the terminals if need be, and grab all the resources and resupply with them, as you're going to need more than just simply tool refill in order to survive these 2 uplinks. Once you've collected all the resources though, you can then start looking around for the terminals, as there's going to be a total of 4 of them in this room. And even though you're only dealing with 2 individual uplinks, you actually have to manage all 4 of these terminals, because these are not just your regular uplink terminals. These are corrupted uplinks, also known as 2-person uplinks, which if you've never dealt with this type of objective, it's not really all that much more complicated than a typical uplink. You're just simply going to have 2 different people on 2 different terminals. The first one you'll be hopping onto, you'll just be putting in the uplink connect command and then the IP address like you typically would, but once you do, instead of it initiating a full team scan, it is going to tell you to go find another terminal and put the uplink confirm command into it to actually initiate the uplink. Then once you actually put the confirm command in and you initiate it, the person on the first terminal, you're going to see something like X07, Y02, Z03, whatever you typically would see just like normal uplinks. However, when you hop off your terminal, you're not going to be seeing a bunch of codes at the top of your screen. Those codes are actually going to be located in logs in the other person's terminal. So what you're going to have to do is say to your partner X02, Y07, or whatever the key is. Then they have to open up the logs, read the uplink one, and then in there, they're going to see a few different keys as well as a few different 4-letter words associated with them. So they'll have to look for the one that is tied with that key that their partner gave to them. And once they know what the word is, they relay it back to their teammate, who is then going to be typing in the uplink verify command just like they typically would with that 4-letter word their teammate just gave to them. Once you do this, it will complete that code, and then you move on to the next one just like you typically would. And these 2 uplinks are going to have a total of 3 different codes you're going to have to deal with. As for setting up for the first uplink, this might go over smoothly or it might be a little bit awkward, because the thing is, not all 4 of these terminals are unlocked. One of them is actually password locked, and the only way to open it up is by going into the northern zone, zone 378, and finding a terminal in there which will have the password you need to unlock that terminal. But if you do this right off the get-go and open up that northern zone, you actually open up a new spawn location for both of the uplinks, because corrupted uplinks are not like regular ones. Instead of it spawning 2 rooms away from you somewhere inside of your active zone, it just simply spawns them 2 rooms away from you, even if it is in a different zone. So if you open up the northern area, like I said, you have to deal with enemies coming from the north and the south for both of the uplinks, which means ideally you want to deal with one of them first and then go up north. That way you only have to deal with 2 spawn locations on the second terminal. This is not always a guarantee though, because the thing is, if that locked terminal is not one of the ones you initiate the uplink from, then you have to do a coin flip. You have to hop onto one of those terminals and try to initiate the uplink and then see which terminal it tells you to go to, because it's either going to tell you to go to the 3rd terminal, which is unlocked, or it's going to tell you to go to the one that is currently locked. If it's the unlocked one, then no biggie, you just simply deal with the first uplink. If it is locked though, then there is no way to actually deal with this uplink terminal quite yet, and because you have technically initiated one, you're not able to go to the other terminal and try to initiate it. So you are forced into then going into the northern zone, getting that password, and then you'll have to deal with enemies from both directions for both uplinks. As for setting up for them, let's assume you get lucky and you only have to deal with southern enemies for the first uplink. Your map overlay is going to look like this. As you can see, 2 different possible small locations for enemies, and there are 3 different doors you could utilize. You don't have to shut these on the first uplink. If you want to, you could actually save them for the second one, which might be a little bit more difficult. It's completely up to you and your teammates. Either way though, doesn't matter what you do with the doors, your 3 sentries are going to be facing towards that open security door at the southern end of the room, either somewhere nearby, or if you want to, you can actually have one of your sentries near one of the people on the terminal to just give them a little bit of cover if any of the enemies just sort of blitz right for them. As for your teammates, you're just going to be staying near that southern end defending, and once again, the people on terminals, you might be able to help out a little bit depending on exactly which terminals you're currently at. Once you got everything set up though and you're good to go, activate the uplink, and once it's been taken care of, you can then pack up your sentries and head up to that northern security door. This door is just going to be a full team scan, so finish the scan and open it up. And then inside there, once again, you're not going to find any enemies whatsoever, but you will find more resources to collect, and there are also going to be a few doors up here which we can utilize for that second uplink. Once we've gotten everything from inside the zone though, and we have found that terminal and we get the password from it, we then go out, unlock that password that's locked, and then we're going to be able to deal with the second uplink terminal. Which, as you can see with this map overlay, assuming all 4 of you are staying inside of this central room, there are 3 different possible spawn locations for enemies, the same 2 from down south and 1 additional one from up north. And there are 5 different doors that you could potentially shut, so if you haven't used them already, feel free to just shut them right now. As for your sentries, you could just have 2 of them facing towards the south, 1 up to the north, or 2 up north, 1 to the south. Personally, I like to do 2 from the south, as there's sort of a greater chance that they'll come from down there, and you just handle this fairly similar to how you handled the first one. And that's really all there is to it when it comes to this uplink. You're just going to be doing your best to deal with those regular strikers and shooters. There can also be a few hybrids during these uplinks, which if they do spawn in, try to get rid of them quickly as they can pepper you down pretty easily in this room. And if you're able to survive and get both of your uplinks completed, your main objective is completed. No more enemies will be spawning in for the uplink, but an extraction alarm will be initiated that will spawn in 3 regular giant strikers roughly every 1.5 minutes. It's also going to unlock the secondary bulkhead door, and your extraction scan will appear at the beginning of the level. So if you're doing a main objective only run, all you need to do is just make your way back to the beginning, get on the extraction scan, and hold out against those 3 giant strikers every so often. Which, if somebody on your team has a sniper rifle or a burst cannon or maybe even a scatter gun, it's pretty easy to deal with these giants. Everybody else though, if you're trying to go for a secondary run, we need to now run all the way back down south to where the secondary bulkhead door is and open it up as there's no scan tied to it, and then head into the area to deal with our secondary objective before we leave. Now, upon entering into zone 415, you'll see that your secondary objective is to find the data sphere, which is located somewhere in your current zone, bring it with you to the end frame, which will always be located inside zone 419, and then bring the data sphere all the way back to extraction with you. So somewhere inside this current zone, you'll be able to find that data sphere, but there's also going to be a fair amount of enemies in here, most of which are going to be hybrids. So you can either aggressively melee kill your way through them, or you can just simply blast them to smithereens with your ammunition. But as you make your way through, making sure you keep in mind that extraction alarm that's spawning at 3 giants every 1.5 minutes from behind you, just go through, grab that data sphere, make your way to the back end of it, and there you'll find a security door to zone 416. This security door is just simply going to be a full team scan, so do the scan, open it up, and head right on inside. As for zone 416, there's going to be more enemies in here, most of which are going to be regular strikers and shooters, I believe. There'll be more resources to collect, and there's going to be 3 different security doors. 1 to zone 417, 1 to zone 418, and 1 to zone 419. Now, zone 419 is, of course, where you need to go, but that door is locked and requires a color key card in order to open it up. That key card, as you probably already guessed, will always be located either in zone 417 or zone 418. So hop onto a terminal, query that key card to figure out which one of the 2 zones it's in, and once you know, you could drop off that data sphere at the security door to 419, then go over to whichever one of the 2 zones you're heading to, do the full team scan tied to it, and then head right on inside. As for these 2 side areas, there's going to be a fair amount of giants and hybrids in them, as well as some regular enemies, more resources for you to collect, and of course that colored key card. Which that key card is really all you need, so once you find it, you could just simply leave the area, as there's also plenty of resources in 419 to resupply yourself with if need be. So get the key, get out, plug it into that security door, do the full team scan that's tied to the security door to 419, open it up, and head inside. In there, like I said, decent amount of resources to collect, no enemies to deal with, and in the middle of the room is going to be that end frame. But before you plug that data sphere into it, you are going to want to resupply it and make sure you're ready for the last leg of the level. Because once you plug that data sphere in, it is going to deactivate the current extraction alarm, it is going to cover the entire level in pitch black darkness, and then after you're able to take the data sphere out, a few seconds later, it's going to cause a new extraction alarm to initiate. This one basically being a mini surge alarm. It's not going to be constantly spawning in 25 regular striker shooters and respawning them as you kill them off, but it will be spawning in waves of about 15 or so regular enemies, and as you kill off about half of the wave, it will spawn in a new wave to replace those enemies. So what I recommend you do is grab the resources in here, resupply as best you can, heal everybody up as much as possible, and then carry anything with you that you're not going to be able to utilize right now, and then also wait for a new wave of giants to spawn in. Because if you don't, there is a chance that right as you plug the data sphere in, a wave is going to spawn in, and blasting your way through them on the way out can cause you to take a little bit of unnecessary damage. So wait for a wave, deal with them, and as soon as they're dead, plug the data sphere in so that it'll prevent the next wave from spawning in. And then as soon as you're able to grab the data sphere, pick it up and start making some headway back to the beginning of the level. Once the music kicks back in, a new wave is going to spawn into the area, and it's either going to be spawning ahead of you or behind you. If it spawns ahead of you, you're going to have to blast your way through it, which I would say drop the data sphere and just all four work together to deal with those enemies. If it spawns from behind you though, then you're in luck, because you can pretty much just ignore it. There are going to be a lot of doors that you can shut, and maybe even C-foam with C-foam grenades if you happen to find a few of them in the level, between you and the extraction point. So just shut the doors behind you to delay the enemies a little bit, open up the map every so often just to double check and make sure you're heading the right way, since this area can be a little bit maze-like, and just keep on making your way back towards the beginning. Ideally, as long as you're not stopping to smell the roses along the way, you'll be able to get all the way back to extraction before any of those enemies even have the chance to catch up to you. In which case, you just drop the data sphere into the extraction point, place down all 3 of your sentries, and then get ready to hold out for a bit, as this is a pretty slow extraction scan. But assuming you all make it back in one piece, or at least some of you make it back in one piece, and you're able to hold out long enough, you'll get that scan all the way to 100%, and upon doing so, you are done and you have completed alternate R5C3. And that's all there is to it. Alternate R5C3 takes our most valuable resource and tosses most of it right out of the complex. And without that abundance of ammo, we have to rely mostly on our tools to survive all those alarms, which I find to be a neat little gimmick. Triple sentry loadouts can get you through many of the levels in GTFO, but it's missions like this one where sentries far outweigh mines and C-foam that I really enjoy bringing all that extra firepower. It's also quite nice for people like me who sometimes just can't seem to hit the broadside of a barn with our own 2 guns. As always though, thank you for watching this video all the way to the very end. I do hope that I was able to provide you with some assistance in beating this level. If you have any tips or tricks for this level that you want to share, any questions for me, or you just have something in general that you would like to say, please do let me know down in the comments. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me, and if you want to join my lovely community, there's a link to my Discord down in the description, as well as some other links you might be interested in. Among those links being one to the official GTFO merch store, which, as always, I highly recommend you check out if you're a fellow GTFO enthusiast and you're looking to pick up some sweet merch. Until next time, if you haven't already heard, 10 Chambers has finally created their own content creator program, so if you're a fellow creator and that interests you, I'd highly recommend going and checking it out, and hopefully, I'll see all you wonderful people in the next video.